Hey, everybody. Welcome to the B2B Revenue Leadership Podcast. Today, we've got a great topic about what's really working today in B2B marketing. It's all about empathy, understanding your market, understanding the people that you're marketing to before you come up with a strategy. Understand what they care about. How do they find out about products like you? And really getting into what their daily life is like. What emotions do they feel? This is a great conversation with Brian Carroll. He's a great guy. He's written one book already. He's coming out with another. And we're going to get into his experience and his journey. And if you're a salesperson, really stick into this because he's a marketing guy who really sounds like a sales guy. And I love that. I love that merging of the two fields. I think it's inevitable that we really got to understand each other's role. But before we get into the interview, I want to make sure that you're aware of, I've got the first class of 2018 graduating probably by the end of July out of the Sales Development Rep Graduate School. These people are pre-trained, pre-skilled, and are getting gobbled up by the managers out there who are listening to the podcast. So if you're looking for sales development reps, business development reps who know what to do, know how to do it, and have demonstrated that, let me know. Connect up with me on LinkedIn, send me a note, and I'll make sure that I share your company and your openings with them so that they get gobbled up really quick. They've really done a great job. Also, I want to make sure you're checking out gong.io and Discover.org. They've been working together on a great ebook. It's kind of a double header about both on marketing and sales, about how to get the salespeople up from B players to A players. What's the difference? What do the A players do differently? And this is what we all want. We all want really engaged clients and meetings. So check out that at either site, discoverorg.com, who has the best data out there. If you want clean, accurate data with social information, with org charts, everything that you need to connect up with your market space, and gong.io that has an AI-based analysis of the actual sales calls to give coaching based off of facts and historical data. It's great stuff. Check those both out, and I'll sum up the interview at the very end and give you an update on the courses. Hey, Brian, welcome to the show. As a way of getting started, tell us about yourself.
Well, Brian, I've been in B2B marketing for 25 years. I focused primarily on the complex sale. And so I founded a company called InTouch that I grew. They were an Inc. 500 company. We sold to Mech Labs, which owned Marketing Sherpa, Marketing Experiments, and so worked in a number of roles there. I wrote a book, Lead Generation for the Complex Sale, that did pretty well, and I write a blog. So while I was working at Mech Labs, we focused on understanding why people make the choices and decisions they do. And over time, what I was seeing is that we were focusing on understanding customer motivation. And it was something that we knew was the most important part of what drives people in their buying process. And so I got really curious about that question. And 2 years ago, I left Mech Labs to really understand this, what motivates us. And as I got into that, I discovered that it's our emotions that motivate us. And this is something to our listeners. Well, that's nothing new. But here's the thing. Science has actually proven every decision we make is based in emotion.
Yes.
And this includes B2B. And so I began saying, well, how do we understand that? And there's a whole story you can get into in empathy. But that's what I've been doing for the past 2 years, is understanding our customers and answering these questions of what drives us, because that's the hardest thing in B2B marketing is lead generation is a big deal. That's what I was in. But the problem is the best companies, only 2% of them convert their leads into customers. So in effect, 98% of leads fail. And so that's why I'm trying to answer this question is that if we consider success a 98% failure, we can do a lot better. And so that's what I do.
And it's getting pretty tough out there, isn't it? As far as marketers, as far as really, communicating a message and getting people's attention and then for them to take action.
It really is. I mean, if you look at it, we have more channels and ways and content to reach customers than ever before. But actually connecting with them, actually building trust has never been harder. And there's a lot of reasons why, but namely, our customers don't believe us. They don't believe our claims. They're crazy busy. There's all these reasons, but in fact, HubSpot did a survey. They found only 3% of buyers believe that marketers and sellers are trustworthy. So we have a huge issue with bridging the gap with our customers. And so that's why it's so hard. And it doesn't, unfortunately, appear to be getting any easier.
Well, that's it. The old school thing of make a big fat claim, right? And just by the definition of big and fat means that it's exaggerated. And, the consumer or the buyer, the viewer of that content looks at that and has an emotional reaction. And I can't agree with you more because, I share stuff on LinkedIn all the time. And nobody, if I said a question like, what's your favorite color, blue or pink, they answer 7. Right? Nobody answers the question because whatever pops into their little head, they put it in as a comment. And I think that your point about the emotion is, yeah, exactly. That is what you have to grasp or elicit from the consumer.
And that's the thing. We can't just ask someone, how are you feeling?
No.
If you and I are asking how you're feeling today, and I'm thinking my own experience for our listeners. This is July 5th. We just had the 4th of July holiday. If we stayed up past midnight because we were having fun, we still needed to do this interview, and so we're going to feel great. But the fact is that our customers don't believe us because we don't. First of all, there's this aspect of vulnerability, which is difficult to be because we want to present perfection. And in the real world, our customers and us know that it's not perfection that we work in. And what's really happening is, hard as it is to sell and market, it's gotten even harder for our customers to buy. And so that's part of what I'm sure we can talk about as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But when you go to meet a client, how do you elicit the emotions that their market feels, and how do you, first identify them, and then how do you appeal to them?
Well, it starts with being clear on developing an ideal customer profile. And I think a lot of people think when I say that, they're thinking, well, I have personas. And I find most personas are not representative of reality. They're an amalgam, and they aren't practical because they aren't actually based on real-world customer insight or customer wisdom. They're based on, if I were to tell listeners, well, be empathetic and think about your customers, here's the problem. The first thing you got to overcome is if you left with one thing today, well, Brian said be empathetic, what's going to happen is I just set you up for failure. I just set you up for something that will backfire. You know why that is? A group of scientists studied 480 marketers, and what they found is telling them to be more empathetic actually had the exact opposite effect. And telling them to tune in to their customers had the exact opposite effect. And here's why. Is that when marketers were more empathetic, or how they thought they were, what they did is they actually looked at what the customer wanted from the lens of as if they are the customer. Yeah. And they became more self-referential. They looked at things in an egocentric way. Here's the other thing. If telling you to be more empathetic, so I'm going to give you some tools to overcome this bias. The other thing is that marketers who are more empathetic actually ignored real-world customer data more. So when they felt they were more empathetic, they actually ignored data about the customer. So here's how you overcome that. There's 3 things. One, I recommend you actually need to talk to your customer. And surprisingly, B2B marketers are pretty insulated. We don't actually spend enough time with the people we want to reach. And so what I found is if you want to have personas that matter, if you want to have journey maps that actually are based in reality, if you want to understand what motivates your customer, you can do something I call it's a mind of customer interview. And it's a cognitive interviewing technique that actually has been proven. It's used actually in research for criminal background in searching things, because what we do is we ask people to tell me the story. Take me back to the day when you were first looking. And so interview current customers and have them take you back to the day and tell you the story of what they went through to work with you, what they went through to buy from you. So take me back to that first day. What actually caused you to start looking? What was it that actually triggered you to begin looking in the first place? And then you listen. And I find most interviews I do with customers, and I interview, that's one of the main things I do with my clients, is I actually talk with their customers. And I get these amazing insights as people share their story, because when someone shares their story, instead of sharing what I did and here's how I felt, if you ask those direct questions, you miss the opportunity. When someone shares their story, they tell you three things. What did I do? They tell you the questions that they were asking themselves. What was I thinking? And then you begin actually hearing from the tone of their voice, from the situation at hand. And this is where you apply your empathy, how they were feeling. In some cases, they tell you how they felt, or they tell you how their colleagues felt. But when we ask the direct question, how are you feeling when you took that step? We can't answer it, because most of the time, what research shows is that 95% of the decisions we make are unconscious. But when you tell it within the context of a story, this is where you need to listen in and you can tune in. So this is mind of customer interviews. There's two more things. Empathy mapping I talked about, which is mapping out 4 quadrants, and this is where you need customer data to do it, but you're answering on the left-hand side, what are they saying and what are they doing? So these are things we can actually observe our customers saying and doing. The only way we know that is we actually need to have real-world experience with a customer. So get out of the building, interview customers. One person I interviewed, Dave Brock, he actually was selling to bankers, and you know what he did? He spent time in the bar that the Wall Street bankers he was selling to would go to, and he would listen to what they said in the conversations. And so empathy-based listening is the other thing, which is you're not listening to reply, you're listening for what motivates the customer, what is actually behind what they're saying, what is actually behind that. And so you're processing information at 2 levels. What do they directly say? But you're also trying to answer what's behind that, what's driving that. And this is where your empathy is your intuition.
And what are some of the typical emotions? Clearly, there's probably pain, but characterize that pain, and how do you turn that into something?
Every step of the journey. So when people buy from you, it is all a journey. So think of it like a hero's journey. You're asking a customer, and what they're doing is they don't go into your funnel. It's like climbing a mountain. And as they're going through that step, what you want to know is that there's an emotion and there's a series of emotions people feel as they go through that decision. So we aren't thinking machines that feel, we're feeling machines that think. So often in the beginning, there's some dissatisfaction that occurs in the customer. And so there's 27 emotions we experience. So scientists proved we don't have 6, we have 27. So it often starts with some level of dissatisfaction or satisfied, or there's a triggering event, some catalyst that causes something to change. What happens in the beginning is often there's an excitement, and there's within that excitement there's a sub feelings of hope. There's also feelings of confusion, but hope is the most prevalent one. So this is where people start in the beginning feeling hopeful, like they can solve a problem or they can get something they want that they don't have. What happens, though, when you get the next step in the journey, so I start my quest. I begin as the customer going that we experience this dip. There's this delusionment that happens pretty early because it's not as easy as we thought it was going to be. It's harder to figure out. not only that, I got to get buy-in now from my colleague and from my team members, and I got to ask myself, do I want to do that? Do I want to go through this
Right.
process? How would this
Put my
impact
name
me
on that.
if this
Yeah.
fails? And so, what most people don't realize is B2B decisions are more emotional than consumer purchases. And this actually flies in the face of how we do most of our marketing, was treating people as rational, logical. So you need to do both. And a large part of what you're doing is helping your champion. If you follow the challenger customer, challenger sale, your mobilizer, you need to help them regulate the emotions of not only themselves, but the team that's involved in the buying process, because you're actually helping a group make a decision. And people cannot make decisions if they feel fear or anxiety. And this is what happens often in the middle of the funnel.
Yeah.
You go from confusion to disillusionment to feeling this dip of anxiety.
Right. Yeah.
And
I've seen that so many times, is right when they try and get the money for it, all of a sudden they go to an executive and the executive starts to question it, and all of a sudden that confidence gets chipped away. But how do you leverage this into a marketing strategy?
So what I find is that most of us have figured out a way to get people to raise their hands. And that's actually one of the great successes of content marketing, is we've got people to opt in. We've got people to start the journey of learning about the problem or the issues, or we've actually created some insight in some way. What I would say is that where there's this whole mushy middle of the customer buying journey, and to make this really practical, what you need to do is you need to actually map out the journey of how your customers buy. And how you do that is you interview your customers, and the ones that you've sold to recently, and you find out what was their journey. How did they go through it? What was helpful? What were the challenges? What are the lessons learned? And often customers are willing to share their journey with you, and your motivation is to help make the journey easier for other customers just like them. That may involve you giving them an incentive to do that, et cetera.
Now, you sound so much more like a sales guy than a marketing guy. Why is that? Am I onto something?
Do I?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I've never heard a marketing person talk about anything after a lead.
Yeah. So here's the reason why, is that if you want to succeed today as a marketer, you actually need to think about the entire funnel and go beyond the lead. And what I found is that, I was part of this whole movement of seeing things as two funnels. That was a key idea in my book. The bigger and better you build your marketing funnel, the bigger and better you build your sales funnel. But you know what? It's not like that anymore. And it's because salespeople really struggle. They are actually the ones on the ground. They have all this customer insight data. They have all this wisdom. And so what I found is there's these two silos, and marketing has this amazing, awesome opportunity to be super strategic in being intentional and mapping out the journey and doing these things and helping salespeople know what to say, know how to advance the conversation. And so why I think I sound more like a salesperson is because I'm really focused on, and I think salespeople have the same heart, and I think marketers who succeed do as well, which is the best marketing and selling feels like helping. And because why? It really is.
Yeah.
And so, my motivation is I want to help marketers be a force for good inside their companies. And so to do that, I knew that I needed to go to the customer. And I think I sound more like a salesperson because I'm actually spending time with the customer more than probably a lot of marketers do.
That's it, because I think most of the marketers are trying to get the hands raised, and they kind of cheat, not in the pejorative means, but in the kind of the easy route where they'll have a listicle that would attract almost anybody, and they get the credit for the lead, but that's not a lead, that's a contact. And I think the days of needing a contact are over because now everybody's visible.
Yes.
With an account-based marketing strategy, predictive analytics, retargeting, lookalike audiences, we can get to the people we want to get to. But have you spent much time on how do you convert them without a big fat claim, but really eliciting the emotion or creating the emotion that they should be feeling.
Well, what I found is that, so yes, and to succeed and help win more sales, what we need to actually understand is the driving motivation for the customer, and to do this, it involves us going deeper to understand how did they buy, how did my current customers buy, and what empathy allows us to do is intuitively begin testing out and learning. And so I'm a believer in bringing science to this process because I really believe in testing to answer questions we don't know the answer to, not testing to answer what we already know. And so what we first got to do is collectively get. And so when I work with larger companies, here's what I find is they have these amazing pockets of customer insight, and they keep asking the same customers basically the same questions, and they don't share these insights across the organization. So that's something practical that you need to do is look at who's talking to our customers. And so practically, you have a lot of the listeners have sales development reps, inside salespeople who are talking to potential customers every day. Have you actually double jacked, which means you've plugged in and listened to the conversations they're having? Yeah. In a lot of states, you can record the conversations. Minnesota is one party, so we can record both sides of the conversation as you call. And so listen to call recordings. You get an amazing amount of insight from that of where people are talking. The other thing is when your customer success or customer support team also has this amazing customer insight. Look at what they're posting on discussion boards. What are the questions they're asking? What are the things that they're struggling with? What are they saying to each other? Again, that's data you already got. You don't have to go out and ask people. It's already there. Yeah. And the emotional side is that you can begin categorizing what are the emotions they're experiencing. And for each step, there's going to be 5 to 7 main key emotions people are experiencing. And then what you need to do is look at how do we meet them where they're at. So the thing with what I advocate and what I do is that you can use this. There are people who have what's the term? Anyway, we'll move past that. That you can use this insight for good, or you can use it to manipulate people. So I don't cause people to feel things. What I do is I help meet where they're at. And my goal is to help them on a productive moving forward step. And either they're going to answer the question that this isn't right and this isn't a fit. And my motivation really needs to be, I don't want people who this is going to be good for to buy this, because I don't want them to fail and I don't want us to harm people. I don't want us to hurt. But what I want to do is I want to ensure that they're working with their team, because most people don't stop buying from you because what you sell isn't valuable. They stop buying from you because the anxiety, the fear, it's easier for us to stay in the status quo because that feels safer. Yeah. And it just does. And so you're not competing against competition. What you're doing is you're competing against the emotions. And when fight or flight is activated, when the amygdala is hijacking us,
forget it.
We cannot think. And so I would say the most useful skill that marketers can have to help advance people is learn about this term called emotional regulation. And that even starts with ourselves. When we feel fearful, when we feel afraid, we actually start treating our customers like objects to convert instead of people who need help.
Yeah. A funny story. I was looking at a website last night, and they actually had the word persona on the website as like, you basically had to self-qualify yourself. And I was like, do you realize people outside of marketing and sales don't know what persona means?
Pick your persona.
Yeah, which persona am I? And And I was like, this was clearly written by a marketing person who didn't have anyone else review it. And I think that is exactly point on, that we are treating our market like numbers. And it's kind of like the dark side of AI and technology. And we're missing out that and trying to treat it like a numbers game when I say it's a people's game. Because no number ever bought from you. No company just buys from you. If they could, they'd go to Amazon, right? It's just people are not getting that. And they keep trying to come up with the better pitch, the prettier picture on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, and some, tagline that's going to get somebody to click on things.
Yeah, and I think the big thing also is if we focus on conversion alone instead of connection, yes, you're missing it. And so what I'm really saying, if you're to wrap this all up, is this is about connection. And practically speaking, empathy gives you the ability to begin understanding others so you can build rapport, you build a connection, and over time you build trust. And no matter what, at Mech Labs, we did a large study. Some of that's been published, some of it hasn't. But numerous research confirms this, that trust does not exist after customers buy. It must exist. The emotion of trust must exist before people can say yes.
Yes.
And so every sale, every journey is really ultimately about building a relationship, and you need to have trust, that emotion of trust.
And that's it, because we no longer need unqualified, uninterested people to convert. What we need to do is find the people that should be interested in our product and build up that know, like, and trust over time, not in one email, not in one phone call, not in one ad or piece of content. Tell us about your book.
So I'm writing a book called The New Science of Empathy-Based Marketing, and it's really focused on answering these practical questions, some of which we've talked about, which is how do we connect with customers? How do we drive better results? How can we actually look for ways of making a better connection? Because as we talked about, the biggest struggle marketers have isn't reaching customers. We have so many ways to do it. Yeah. It isn't identifying customers. We have so many ways of doing it. It isn't having technology. What it really is it's actually making this connection. And why that is we have really overcorrected on the data, on the practical tool side, but we've actually underutilized this aspect of emotional intelligence and bringing that into the marketing and sales realm to really help connect with customers, build trust, and ultimately, from that, you will see increased conversion. From that, you will see more wins. But it requires us to go through this whole process of actually understanding what motivates our customers.
And what's the timing on the book?
I am in the process. I'm halfway through writing it, and my plan is for the book to actually be finished this summer and for it to be published either the January or June 2019 timeframe.
Excellent. But until then, where can people go to connect with you and learn more about your work?
Well, two places. You can go to Markempa, markempa.com, or the B2B leadblog.com.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that interview. It was a lot of fun. Brian's a great guy. And really look into Amazon and get his book. I think you really get a different sense of what works today in marketing. And I think he really admitted that once he applies this stuff to your own business, because what happens is we get so close to it that we don't see the forest through the trees. And once you start talking to clients and finding out how they found out about it, what I've found out is it's a lot of word of mouth. And word of mouth is still the most powerful marketing, this advocacy marketing, and really doing our job as the whole business. And I understand in marketing and sales, we don't own the whole business, but that personal idea that these are people at the other end is something that we keep coming back to, but it's so easy to forget. And I get it completely. So make sure you're checking out my website, b2brevenue.com, where I have a free ebook for you so you can understand how large companies make product and services selections, that process that goes on internally that very few people understand and nobody really teaches because nobody really knows. But I did it for 25 years, and I just became a kind of a scientist of it because my income was based off of it. Also, on that website, check the training courses out. And if you think the course would be applicable to your company or yourself, I've got my schedule link in there that where you can pick up a 15-minute segment and talk through it. If you're serious, please, because I've been overwhelmed a little bit with that. And if you are kind enough to share the podcast, I've got another book, The Full Maverick Selling Method for the sales team. Happy to send that to anybody who shares the screenshot of the podcast while you're listening to it onto LinkedIn and just name 2 people, salespeople or marketing people, and I will then send you the book in PDF format, the whole book, no segment. The book on the website is a 20-page book that is also on Amazon. Well, I think it's still on Amazon. I had put it up there, and it's basically the exact steps that companies go through internally to justify a business decision. And this isn't really taught because everybody thinks it just happens naturally. Nothing could be further from the truth. Nothing happens naturally other than nothing. Companies are set up to buy nothing. And what we have to understand that is that everyone says, well, what's your buying process? They don't know. No one teaches it. Did anyone teach you how your company buys? There's the administrative side of buying. There's the doing your job and everyone trying to get a new product or a new capability in-house. But spending the company's money is not something that happens naturally. And that's what I kind of teach people. So that's a lot of fun. I really appreciate everybody listening. I hope you're enjoying your summer. And if you connect up with me on LinkedIn, I'd really appreciate that. If you happen to see my content and on your LinkedIn or Twitter streams, please share it. I'd really appreciate that. Thanks for listening. And tell a friend about the B2B Revenue Leadership Podcast.